Makes sense. I'm sure it's very similar in your sports card endeavors, seeking out some of that greatness.
Oh man.
How has that sort of changed your just like hobby? Because it's important. I think, regardless of whether you like sports cards or not, it's important to have a hobby.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us now, sports cards has been, but is more than ever,
Yeah.
that prevalent hobby. How has your sort of experience been these last 24
It's
months?
been
And did
it's been
Gary loop
awesome.
you in super early too, or did you loop him in? How did that play?
No, Gary looped me in more so, but what I would say and why Gary was so early and why I was so quick to follow suit is that we never left sports cards. Um,
Right.
you know, we my first hobbies were video games and sports cards. Like when I was little, there was no bigger euphoric moment than opening up a fresh pack and hopefully striking something big. Like I learned sports through three vehicles: Sports Center, and I would just watch Sports Center on loop. Video games like Madden, NBA Live, etc., and sports cards. That's how I learned sports. That's how I learned who the players were and who the prospects were and who the good teams were. Like those three things. It's wake up at 6:30 in the morning, watch Sports Center before school, come home and play Madden franchise mode, and then from occasion open up a box or a pack of cards. Like huge hobby for me. And I'm a collector by heart too. So another thing that I collected avidly growing up, I grew up a diehard WWE fan and WCW when they had their run, and like huge diehard, really deeply knowledgeable fan, like to a stunning point. And so that's another part. We represent Charlotte Flair. That's a fun aspect. And I
That's
talked to
so
Charlotte a little bit about that, or Ashley. I talked to Ashley. Her character is Charlotte, but her name is Ashley. Um, and and so I collected the wrestling figures hardcore. So there was these little plastic Hasbro wrestling figures, but then there was also these bigger. They were made by LJN, bigger rubber figures that were more my brother's era, and so I had those figures growing up. So I collected sports cards. I collected action figures. I was huge into Pokemon cards. Huge into Pokemon cards growing up when that hit because I was in middle school when that hit. I was playing, Pokemon Blue and Red on Game Boy and Yellow and buying cards at the hobby shop. And so, it's something that is a hobby of mine in general. And then even like after, I grew up and things like that, and even Gary grew up, we made a huge bet on LeBron in that draft class. Like we bought back in '03, we bought a shit ton of cards, even though we were
really
inactive. Yeah. Because we're
with
just
the
like,
intention of holding them.
yes. And we still have some of our original rip from 2000. Like Gary and I still have some LeBrons and Wades and Mellows and Darkos from that 2003 rip.
Wow.
Bowman, Tops Chrome. Like we had that foresight
What were
fucking
you paying
18
for the
years ago,
boxes back then?
whatever retail was. And it wasn't high. You know what I mean? It was very reasonable because sports cards were not hot in '03.
So I'm thinking like $100, maybe.
I don't know. Different, as different levels
Of
of premium.
course.
You know what we
That's
bought a shit
definitely,
ton of was it was cheap. It was called Fleer Tradition. It's where you can get the trio rookie of LeBron,
of
Melo, and
course.
Wade.
Yeah, yeah.
We pulled a shit ton of those trios and base LeBrons and base Melos and base Wades because they were cheap. Those were like, I want to say those boxes were like $80 a box.
The foresight there is very admirable. That is
So we yeah, I mean we ripped a ton of wax in '03. And then it's always been something we've done for random fun. Like I remember maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I bought a single pack of, I don't even remember what it was. I want to say it was Flawless. Um, and that was like $2,500 a pack. And so I bought a single pack and I didn't tell Gary
the
and I had
case.
it shipped. Yeah, it was in a case.
Right.
Yeah, and it was a single pack in like a big case, like a nice case. The
Yeah,
case is probably
yeah.
worth like $80.
Right.
And then we opened. It was trash. We got nothing. It was
Oh,
literally a complete waste. But it was fun because we do a family vacation every year, and I had it shipped to my parents' houses where we do the vacation. And I just randomly, like midway through our family vacation, I'm like, "Yo, I bought a $2,500 pack of cards. Let's rip it." And he was so pumped, like that kind of stuff. So we never left sports cards. We we ebbed and flowed, obviously.
mhm.
But when Gary came to me, whenever it was 2 years ago, and was just like, "Hey, I'm going to go really deep into sports cars. I think that the market's at the bottom, and it makes no sense, and it's just going to be an alternative asset that people are going to care about." There's a lot of parallels to contemporary art and things like that for the new generation of people that look like me or even younger than me. And he didn't have to do much convincing. I jumped in with him.
I love that.